The United States has eased sanctions on Russia's Federal Security Service. These were imposed over the alleged hacking of the US presidential election. Let's get more on this story now from our correspondent. Caleb Maupin joins me live from New York. Caleb, just take us through then what we know at this stage about this amendment.
Well, the Office of Foreign Assets Control, which is a section of the U.S. Department of the Treasury, has said that transactions with Russia's Federal Security Services, the FSB, are permitted at this point as long as they don't exceed $5,000, and they're done for the purposes of licensing, permits, certifications, or notifications. Now, this is an amendment to the sanctions that were imposed on Russia in the aftermath of the elections. In December of last year, the Obama administration was hurling all sorts of allegations about Russian hackers and Russian meddling, allegedly in the election, and all kinds of things. Now, the White House press secretary, Sean Spicer, he chose not to call it an easing of sanctions. Let's take a listen to what exactly he said, what he chose to call it.
Not easing sanctions. The Treasury Department, it is, from what I understand, it is a fairly common practice for the Treasury Department, after sanctions are put in place, to go back and to look at whether or not there needs to be specific carve-outs for different, either industries or products and services that need to be going back and forth. But I would refer you back to the Treasury Department on that.
Now, whatever you choose to call it, the reality is this is a de facto easing of sanctions. The Obama administration did not want any dealings with Russia or with its federal security services. That was made very clear. And it's important to remember that at numerous times throughout the Obama administration, there were times that new sanctions were slapped on Russia, but they were not described as new sanctions. They were described as clarifications or amendments to the existing sanctions. Now, this is certainly a change. Let's remember the tone of the previous administration and how hostile they were to dealings with Russia. And now we have a new administration that's talking about the possibility of cooperation between the two countries. Let's take a listen to what was said.
As we were doing the hard work of imposing sanctions, we need to keep sanctions on Russia in place.
Russian state actors broke into the DNC.
Not much happens in Russia without Vladimir Putin.
Sanctions against Russia.
Today, President Obama made good on that promise to retaliate, targeting Russia's top intelligence agencies with sanctions.
Now, this is certainly a U-turn in the way relations between the United States and Russia were headed. Now, this could be the beginning of something new. This could be the beginning of possibly a bigger shift, but we don't really know that yet, so we're just waiting to see what happens.
Of course, when Caleb Maupin bringing us the latest on that story. Many thanks there, Caleb. And now let's bring in a guest, because we have on the line former UK diplomat Craig Murray. If you can hear me okay, Craig, welcome to the programme. We've kind of just heard an analysis there from our correspondent, but it's very different if you listen to what the White House is saying about this, trying desperately to play this down. They say that it isn't an easing of sanctions, they're just reviewing it. I mean, it's kind of wordplay. Why do you think they are trying to kind of make everybody think there's nothing really new happening here?
Well, I think the White House shows every sign of, rather sensibly wanting to reset relationships with Russia and move away from the continual confrontation we were seeing before. But on the other hand, they are sensitive to the rather crazy allegations that were being made about Donald Trump and Russian intelligence. So for that reason, they're not wanting to take it too head on. So I think it's not surprising that this is being downplayed and being rolled out in quite a low-key way.
Do you see this as the really kind of wording it for a domestic audience? Because if anything that can be interpreted as really easing off on sanctions will get a very negative response from half of the country.
I think at the moment that's the case. I think there's an awful lot of frenetic worry and concern and demonstrations and protest about Donald Trump taking power at the moment, and the motives behind some of that I'm very sympathetic to. But I think once all that begins to calm down, anybody who in any way views themselves as politically progressive must view it as a good thing that there is an easing of tensions between the world's two largest nuclear-armed powers. Peace and good relationships between Russia and the United States must be a good thing, and I think people will come to see that.
Why do you think this, albeit some people will say a sort of a small move, but why do you think it was taken?
I think it's a start, possibly to some extent testing the political water, within to see how the action goes, particularly within the Republican Party itself, because of course, you have a lot of differing attitudes among Republican members of Congress. So I think they're making a small start and testing the political water.
People will try to read into this whether or not it has any kind of comment on whether or not Donald Trump thinks Russia tried to hack the DNC. Some people will say, OK, if he's easing the sanctions slightly, it suggests he doesn't think that Russia was involved. What's your interpretation of that?
I don't know. People could look at it the other way and say he's easing the sanctions because Russia helped him. So that could be read in either direction. I think the complete lack of any evidence ever given that Russia hacked the DNC, it was a nonsense story, and I hope that it's one that's finally now going to die away.
And the matter of the fact is, Donald Trump's only been in office, a couple of weeks, and already we're seeing positive moves in the direction of Russia. So do you think this is a good sign for relations between the countries now?
I think so. There has been every sign that Donald Trump intended to improve the relationship with Russia, and everything he said, he never backed down from that under a lot of pressure. And there's every sign that he's looking to do it. One thing you have to say about Trump is he is unusually assertive in his first week or two in office in doing the things he said he would do before he got elected.
Craig, many thanks for joining us on RT. Former UK diplomat Craig Murray is my guest.